Uncle Ron. Yep, Uncle Ron and stuff. This is part one of a three-part having to do with networking, uh, uh, MAC addresses, uh, cable, uh, modems, and routers. So I'm going to talk about each in a separate section, but I got to start off with MAC address first. And you say, well, I don't know what that is, and why do we even care about it? Okay, uh, every what's it called? Media Access Controller, MAC, MAC, MAC address. Every Ethernet or Wi Fi adapter that you have in your computer, be it a laptop or a desktop or whatever, the device that you are using to connect to internet or other computers on your network, that device has a unique identifier known as the MAC address. And it is coded into the device, be it a Wi-Fi adapter or a Ethernet adapter. It has a unique identifier. Now, what's the difference between MAC and an IP address? You're probably familiar with IP addresses because that's what you may see in your normal activities when you're hooked to the internet or you're looking at file sharing. You might see the IP address. But what really matters and what really is the core issue is what that address is, what's called physical address of the device that is making that interface connection to the internet or other shared drives on your network. The MAC address is what is it? One, two, three, four, five, six sets. It's a hexadecimal number. It's six sets of numbers, including 0 through 9 and A through Z. And that six numbers comes up, the possible combinations for those six numbers is really, really huge. So every device anywhere in the world that is doing internet connection or an Ethernet connection or a Wi-Fi connection has a unique identifier. That's the MAC address. Well, why is that important? Because routers and modems and all those connection type devices all deal with MAC addresses. They have to know what the MAC address is of that device, and it has to be unique on whatever network or whatever. If you're on a router or a cable modem, it has to be unique. That's what they know. MAC addresses do not change. A device setting a computer doing Ethernet or Wi-Fi, that device ID never changes. However, most routers and modems, cable modems with built-in Wi-Fi or an Ethernet plug-in, those are normally set so that the IP address is sort of automatically set by that router or that modem. And that can change. An example is that people come in with their cell phones, they tie on to your internet. The router automatically assigns them an IP address. It does first get its MAC address, and then it assigns, if it's a unique address, and of course it should be, it'll assign an IP address from that. And the IP address is what is used over the internet to shuffle packets back and forth. And what happens over the internet is chunks of data are divided into smaller called packets. And those packets are sent out over the internet, and an acknowledgement comes back that says, yeah, we got that one. You can send the next one. And so any data, like a movie or whatever, is going to have a lot of packets to it. But that's how they're routed, and they're routed over all of the servers in the world through an IP address. When you send a signal out, it's a very long sort of address. It includes who your internet supplier is. That's a big chunk of it right there, because that's you got to get to that guy first, and then on down to your router, and then eventually your router will send that signal to the right MAC address. MAC is what is directing all of this stuff. IP can change. The IP of your laptop, anytime you turn it off and come back up again, it may get assigned a different IP address depending on what activity has occurred since the last time you were on there. So 4 people came in, they all hooked their phones to it, they're all using it for internet. One of those IP addresses that you used to use is now being used, so you get assigned a new one. So IP addresses can change. That your modem or your router can change the IP address, but not the MAC address. And the MAC address is what everything runs on. Okay, well, you don't normally see MAC addresses. What you see is IP addresses. Well, why do you care? Well, one example is if you do any sort of management with your router or your cable modem slash router, you can go into those things and you can see what devices are connected to that router or to that cable modem. And you see them at the MAC address level. Well, that doesn't tell you a whole lot, unless you've gone around like I have and identified the MAC address associated with every device I have in my house. And I might comment, I have 22 active internet connections at any one time. That's just for me and my wife, 22 different ones. When I have my family come here, I could have close to 40 or 45 different uh, MAC addresses and associated IP addresses on my internet at any one time. When they all go away, those addresses, MAC, the router or the modem, eventually realize they haven't been active for a while. When it checks itself again, it will eventually clean that MAC address out of its table, and it frees up any IP was associated with that address so it can be assigned to somebody else who walks in. But the bottom line is I have 22 different internet devices connected to my router. Now, I don't use the modem, but I use the router. Okay, so if I go look on my router, and I can see I have 22 connections, and I do have the option in my router to name them with some sort of reasonable name, other than it come up and showing me, well, the MAC address is 80BC D4 G178. I don't know what that is unless I go and I've already looked it up. And then I can assign a real name to it saying, well, that's computer 1, that's computer 2. Why do you care about that? If you're looking into your router, you want to make sure nobody else is signing on. And it would probably come up, in my particular case, it would come up as an unknown, and it would show the IP address. Okay, I don't know who that is. Okay, I do not password protect my router's Wi-Fi signals. Most everything I have is running on Ethernet, and you don't have to worry about that. But if you have a broadcast Wi-Fi signal, you normally should secure it, and but I don't. Anyway, the point being is I don't want anybody just snagging on and using my bandwidth for my internet connection. So MAC addresses is what everything deals with at the local level. Once you get on the internet, you're playing IP address stuff, and it's a complicated series of numbers which identify all the way back down to the device that sent that signal or requested something. Like you did a Google search and you got a request, and then you clicked on that Google response. That's all IP oriented. It will go out to the website, pick up what it needs, and send it back to you, and it gets routed down through massive number of switches and so on. When it gets to your router, the router then knows that which device to actually send that to based upon its MAC slash IP address. Okay, so that's why you got to know about MAC addresses. Now what I'm going to do is stop this and go over and go to all my computer and be recording from my computer, and I'll show you how I see on any device there is some way for you to see what the MAC address is of that device. It's sort of hidden, but you can find it. And once you find it, you can make yourself a little chart that says this MAC address is associated with computer 1. This MAC address is on my Fire Stick that's connected to my TV and upstairs. This is the MAC address for the iPhone that my wife has and connects on to the router and uses free Wi-Fi when she's at home. She doesn't use up her minutes of connect time on her cell phone service. That's an option I suggest you do if you have a cell phone and you have a Wi-Fi router at home. Anytime you're home, turn off the cellular and just use the Wi-Fi that you have for free. You will not eat up any message time or internet search time or anything like that. That's enough of this. This is the very first segment. I'm going to go show you how I typically can find a MAC address, and that'll be the end of this portion. Then I'll start the next portion that has to do with inside of a router and looking at the settings inside. This is Uncle Ron stuff. Today is the 16th of September 2025. I hope it recorded. Okay, we're going to find a MAC address for a device, and what I'm going to do, this is my home screen, and it's going to look different from yours, and how I do things over here might be looking different than yours. But what you're going to do is eventually you got to go to settings, okay? And there is on somewhere on your start screen on your menu, you'll see a networks connections, and I'm going to click on that, and up will come. This shows that I have 2 network adapters installed in this particular computer, and this one's been disabled, so I'm going to click on this one. And I think I can do, let's see, if I look at properties, and I'll get this right. No, let's see, no, not that one. Let's do view status of this connection. Okay, it says it is connected at 1 gigabit a second. If I look at the details, click. Here comes the details up, and this is network connection details. It shows that's the name of the device. Here, physical address, that is the MAC address, sometimes referred to as physical address. And you see it consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of 2 digits each. And again, these can go from 0 to 9 to from A to Z. And it is showing these in all capital letters, but the fact is right now we're still in lowercase letters. We have not exhausted this. You have 10 possible numbers here. You have 26 possible numbers here. That combination itself, 26 times 10, is the combination you have there, and then that combination times that times that times that times that is a really huge number. I assume eventually that there will be going so that they do have actually lowercase and uppercase letters. But right now, even though it's displaying in capital letters, that's not really true at the MAC address level. Okay, and if you look down farther, it says, do I have DHCP enabled? That's where the router or cable modem is automatically assigning IP addresses. In this particular case, it assigned that is my IP address for this particular device, for that Mac device. And this is a subnet and that's a whole nother ballgame on my router. Here shows when the lease was obtained, and the router is set up to automatically drop leases every so often. That way it clears out people who come and go, or devices you turn on and turn off. Here's a default gateway, which everything is known to. And those are normal settings. Here's the IP6 address down at the Mac level, the device level. So you could see right here, physical address, that is the MAC address. Okay, right there. And that's for this particular device. And I can close that and close that. That's how you find it. Now, I know this guy is setting on computer 3. So when I get to the portion that has to do with routing, I can create a spreadsheet, if you will, and it says, okay, MAC address, blah, 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 is in fact computer 3. And that way, when I play on the router, I can give that MAC address a friendly name. You're not putting a name on an IP address because that can change. What you're putting a name and associating a name to is a specific media access control device, a piece of hardware somewhere in your laptop or on your desktop or on your whatever device you're using, your phone, your iPad. They all have a specific MAC address. Now, finding MAC addresses is in the phone. There is a setting somewhere which will show you that. You can find it. Same way with iPads and any Apple product. They may call it something else. They don't specifically call it Mac. Just like this particular interface did not call it Mac, it called it physical address. Okay, so you have to get familiar that what you're looking for, and it may have a different name. Okay, but it would be good if you went through all your devices and figured out which one the MAC address for each device, and you knew the name. That MAC is associated with this, what I call this device, Computer One, iPhone, Priscilla, UPS power supply, UPS uninterruptible power supply. It has a MAC address, and I can give it a name. Otherwise, it's setting in the router as unknown. It's got a MAC address, but it's an unknown device. It doesn't have a name. You don't know what it is. That's how you find the MAC address. You may have to search around depending on the device you're playing with, but that is how you do it. So I'm going to tag this one on to the first piece and call it quits on this one.